Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving straight into one of the most foundational texts in spiritual history, the Bhagavad Gita.
We are.
But we're not just exploring the narrative. Today, we're taking a deep cut through a very specific and I think highly rigorous philosophical lens, Dvaita Vedanta.
And that framing is so crucial. I mean, we're working from the foundational interpretations laid down by Sri Madhukara and his Gita Bhashya.
The core commentaries.
Exactly. And the further insights from Sri Raghavendra Tirtha's Gita Vivruti. If you know the Gita, you know there are many schools of thought. Dvaita, which means dualism or difference, it insists on this eternal, absolute distinction between the soul and the divine.
Right. So it's not about finding oneness. It's really about understanding the hierarchy and the absolute supremacy of the Lord. And for context, we should probably remember the setting.
Oh, absolutely. The Gita is the centerpiece. You could say it's the absolute nectar of the epic Mahabharata. It's often called one of the greatest psychological manuals ever written.
And there's this incredible precision to it, isn't there? This focus on the number 18.
There is. If you look closely at the structure, it's amazing. The Mahabharata has 18 volumes. The Gita has 18 chapters, and even the description of the Lord's divine manifestations, what's called Vibhuti Rupa, that's delivered in exactly 18 verses.
It feels intentional, like it's signaling that this knowledge is very carefully measured and organized.
It definitely anchors the complexity.
So our mission today is to distill that core philosophical framework, the roadmap, you could say, that defines this Dvaita interpretation of the Gita. We're focusing on duty, the nature of the soul, and this absolute supremacy of the Lord Almighty.
Let's start right at the beginning then, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Chapter 1, it's just pure psychological drama.
It really is. You have Arjuna, the greatest warrior of his time, arriving to fight a war he knows is righteous, only to be completely overwhelmed.
He looks across the field and sees everyone.
His entire family, his respected teachers, his friends, all assembled against him. And the emotional weight of potentially killing his own kin, it just paralyzes him. He drops his legendary bow, the Gandiva, and just refuses to move.
It's a total breakdown. And Krishna's first response isn't comforting. It's not soothing at all. He goes straight for the jugular, calling Arjuna's feelings unworthy of wise men.
Right.
Why that immediate, stern rebuke instead of, empathy?
Because the situation demanded immediate clarity on Swadharma, on one's inherent duty. Krishna is essentially telling Arjuna to rise up and wage this just war.
It's his job.
It is. For a Kshatriya, the ruling and warrior class, the text explains there is no greater, no loftier duty than fighting for justice. And if Arjuna, the pillar of his class, abdicates this duty, it leads to a catastrophic loss of reputation.
Which, in that worldview, is everything.
It's worse than death itself. It's an existential failure.
So the priority is clear. Define action according to your station, no matter the emotional cost. And to make that cost bearable, Krishna immediately shifts gears, right? He moves to philosophy.
To the nature of the soul. Yeah, that's the foundation that makes the duty possible. Krishna tells Arjuna that the truly wise, they never grieve over the living or the dead.
Why not?
Because the body is temporary, but the soul is eternal. He gives us that fantastic analogy. Just as we experience the transition from childhood to youth to old age, the soul merely passes into the attainment of another body.
It's like a change of clothes.
A change of clothes, essentially, for an unkillable consciousness. The body is just a vessel. So if the soul is eternal, death is just an administrative transition.
But that logic, it immediately creates another problem for Arjuna, right? If life is temporary and the soul is eternal, shouldn't I just renounce everything? Why act at all?
And that's the core confusion that leads us into the second major section, this tension between sannyasa, renunciation, and karma yoga, which is action or duty.
He wants to know which path is better for liberation.
He does. And Krishna is very, very clear. You cannot stop acting.
It's impossible to be truly inactive.
Absolutely impossible. I mean, even if you try to sit perfectly still, your body is still performing activity. Your mind is constantly active. So the goal is never inaction. The goal is proper action.
And performing a prescribed action is actually better than just trying to renounce the world externally.
Much better. True spiritual progress is built on acting correctly.
Okay, so if action is mandatory, how do we make sure our actions, our duties, lead us toward liberation instead of just binding us further to this cycle of birth and death?
That's where the principle of yajna, or offering, comes in. According to this commentary, only those activities performed specifically as an offering to the Lord Vishnu will lead to liberation.
So if your actions are selfish,
If they're driven by personal expectations, ego, or, the desire for the fruits of your labor, those are the ones that bind the soul. The action has to be a selfless offering.
That sounds incredibly demanding. It requires such an intense level of emotional detachment from the outcome.
It does. And the Gita gives us the perfect mental image for this state. The lotus leaf analogy.
I love this one.
The ideal seeker performs their duties fully, diligently, but without any attachment to success or failure. They remain untouched by the entanglement of their actions.
Just as water does not cling to a lotus leaf.
Exactly. You're immersed in the world, yet you remain spiritually dry.
This brings us right to the great philosophical conundrum that Dvaita Vedanta is known for, which is the concept of doership. If I'm performing an action, but I'm detached from the results, who is really doing the acting?
This is the subtlety you have to grasp to understand this whole philosophy. Ignorant people, the text says, mistakenly believe they are independent doers.
But they're not.
The Dvaita school makes this radical distinction. Individual souls have what's called dependent doership. We have the free will to desire and to initiate actions, yes. But the capacity, the power, the actual push to perform that action is granted by the Lord who resides within us.
Okay, let me probe that because it can sound contradictory. We have dependent power, but we're still held accountable for our actions. How do you reconcile that dependency with spiritual responsibility?
Because the Lord grants the power, but we exercise the will. Think of it like a child learning to walk. The parent holds the child up, providing the support. That's the power. But the child still chooses whether to put one foot in front of the other. That's the will.
So our will directs that granted power.
We each has to direct that power towards good ends or selfish ends. So we remain responsible. The Lord is the only independent doer in the entire universe.
Wow. That shift in perspective from being the sole engine to being a supported instrument, that must be essential for conquering our biggest internal battles.
Absolutely. The Gita lays out this chain of downfall. It's like a psychological domino effect.
How does it start?
Just contemplating sense pleasures. That leads to intense desire. And when that desire is frustrated, it generates anger, krodha. That in turn leads to delusion, loss of memory, loss of discrimination, and eventual collapse.
It's basically a map of how we self-destruct.
Precisely. And the greatest enemy in this whole process is desire, kama, and anger, both born from passion. Krishna says these enemies must be destroyed by controlling the sense organs first.
You have to cut the chain at the first link.
You have to stop that initial contemplation, force the mind to withdraw.
Okay. That gives us a clear directive on action and self-control. Let's pivot now to the nature of the Supreme itself, moving into the deeper knowledge sections of the Gita. We hear about two types of knowledge, jnana and vijnana.
Right. So jnana is your indirect knowledge. That's what we get from reading scriptures, listening to teachers, discussing philosophy.
It's reading the map.
It's reading the map, exactly. Vijnana, on the other hand, is specialized, direct, experiential knowledge. That's what you gain after self-realization, when you've had the blessing of a vision or a direct realization of the Lord.
So vijnana is actually reaching the destination and seeing it for yourself. And the most emphatic truth delivered is what Dvaita philosophy calls Vishnu Sarvottamatva.
The absolute, undeniable supremacy of the Lord. Yes. Krishna states it so clearly. There is no entity in this entire universe that is superior to me. He is the foundation of all reality.
And he uses that wonderful analogy to explain how he sustains everything while remaining sort of invisible.
The garland of pearls. He says everything in the universe is supported by him, just like a garland of pearls is supported by a string. The pearls exist, they're different from the string, but they are utterly dependent on it for their structure.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the core principle of difference that defines this school, the Panchabheda.
The 5 fundamental eternal differences, yes. This is where Dvaita really distinguishes itself. You must realize the supreme difference between the Lord and everything else.
The Gita clarifies the different entities involved, right?
It does. You have the Lord Almighty, Paramatma. You have the individual souls called Kushara because they are tied to perishable bodies.
Yeah.
And then you have Goddess Mahalakshmi called Akshara because she is eternal and non-perishable.
Okay.
The supreme, the individual souls, and the eternal aspect of nature. And the philosophy insists that the Lord is fundamentally superior to and separate from both the souls and the goddess. Absolutely, that distinction is key. Dvaita requires the realization of this hierarchy, this gradation, to move toward liberation. And this leads us right into probably the most complex analogy in the Gita.
The Ashwatha tree. the tree of the universe in chapter 15. It's so enigmatic with its roots above and branches below. What is that tree illustrating?
It's a cosmic map of our material entanglement. The Lord is the superior foundational component, the source of the whole structure. The roots and branches represent sentient and inert nature, the three gunas, the whole binding structure of the universe as we experience it. It seems eternal, unbreakable.
And the purpose of the analogy isn't just to admire its complexity.
No, not at all. The purpose is to tell the seeker how to escape it. You must cut this cosmic tree down, and the only tool that works is the sharp weapon of firm detachment.
So detachment is the axe.
It is. It allows the seeker to separate the Lord, the foundation, from nature and the individual souls, and to realize the distinct supreme nature of the divine and the dependent nature of everything else.
It's like a surgical operation of consciousness. Before we get to the final goal, what about the vibhuti, the Lord's manifestations? If the Lord is so distinct, how do we understand his presence in the world?
That's explained so beautifully. All the supremacy we see in the world, whether it's Vyasa among the sages or Arjuna among the Pandavas, it's not their own inherent quality.
It's a reflection.
It is due only to an infinitesimal fraction of the Lord's special presence in them. They are manifestations of his excellence, not the excellence itself.
It is a truly humbling thought. It means no earthly superiority is really our own. It's all reflected glory. Let's bring this home now to the ultimate goal. The whole journey is paved with bhakti, devotion.
Yes, the Supreme One is reachable only through pure, exclusive devotion. You can't rely on just knowledge or just action. It has to be devotion that sustains both. And this devotion must be constant.
Which ties back to the focus on the single most critical moment in a human life.
The final moment, the time of departure. The focus is so intense because the mind is naturally scattered. Only those who are continuously meditating on the Lord throughout their life will be able to forcibly withdraw the mind and remember him when it counts the most.
That final thought dictates the destination.
It does. If the mind is focused on him, the soul attains his abode.
And once you attain that state of liberation, of moksha, what happens?
The cycle of births and deaths, this world of misery, it ends. Those who reach the Lord's abode will not return. And moksha isn't just an absence of pain, it's characterized by eternal bliss, a state where all forms of misery are just permanently gone.
So this has been a really rigorous deep dive. And it seems the Dvaya framework of the Gita demands three things from you, the seeker. Adherence to duty, swadharma, complete emotional detachment, that lotus leaf ideal, and singular exclusive devotion to the Supreme Lord.
And if we look at the context from our sources, the philosophical intent behind all this is, well, it's astonishingly compassionate. The Mahabharata was composed by Vedavyasa, seen as a form of the Lord, specifically to house all the essential teachings of the Vedas.
To make them accessible.
Exactly. This allowed everyone, even those traditionally excluded from reading the Vedas directly, to gain the necessary spiritual knowledge for their journey. It's a universally available guide to truth.
A profound act of spiritual inclusion. Our source material provides a beautiful final thought for you to consider. It states that simply reading and analyzing the true meaning of the Gita can rid one of sins and lead to salvation. So considering the stringent requirements for detachment, for action, and for singular devotion we've discussed, what consistent daily practice will you implement to begin traversing that river of worldly afflictions?